Hello, everyone. This is MVJ, your inner strength, relationship, and individual coach, using African philosophy and Western psychology to help you to live life more abundantly. I just want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I really appreciate all of the comments that I am getting out there in the world. I meet a lot of different people, a lot of friends who are tuning into the radio station and who are looking at the Facebook ads and things to that nature, and I really appreciate it. And so now we have a bunch of questions that one particular person has asked me concerning the grasshopper and the crow. And if we remember in the last episode, the grasshopper and the crow, we talked about how the grasshoppers that are quarreling is easy prey for the crow. So the crow desires that the grasshoppers continue to quarrel or to fight. And that is a metaphor how we are in relationships. If we continue to quarrel, or if there is division amongst us, in this African proverb, then it is easier for the enemy, whoever that enemy or whatever state that enemy may be, to continue to destroy the relationship. And then we gave a metaphor for the enemy being anything. It could be some type of problem that happens within the relationship that's unique to the individual people. Okay, so what we're going to do, there are approximately four questions. And I don't know if she wants me to give her name. I probably won't do that until next time, but I really want you guys to send in your questions, and so that we can have like a question and answer type of thing. And I'm going to use this along with some of my theories in answering these questions. Sometimes it will be more specific toward individuals and won't be couples, and sometimes it'll be couples and not necessarily individual. But all of these different types of formats can really help to boost your relationship if you are in a relationship, and individually if you are looking for more self-fulfillment. And those are some of the teachings that I teach also in the Warrior Spirit and also in the Peace Seeker, and the couples also, and the marriage and family issues that may come along with it. Okay, so without any further ado, let us look at it. We're going to cover one of these questions, and the question is, how can a partner help get a stuck relationship to flow again? How can a partner help to get a stuck relationship to flow again? Very good question. And I come across this a lot in my experience from helping couples when they are in a relationship and things start to become stagnant. And so let's break this down for just a moment. Now, she is asking the question, what can she do in order to help this relationship to flow? Now, what does the word flow mean? So to me, it is suggesting that she desires a renewing of the relationship, that the relationship is moving, it's evolving, it's growing, it's doing something that is benefiting both people, both parties. And so where these two people are involved in the relationship, it seems to me that one person is experiencing stagnation. And then that's going to give rise to different types of conflicts that happen within the relationship. There's an African proverb that says it is easier to fall in love than to stay in love. It's easier to fall in love than to stay in love, because staying in love takes work. After the honeymoon phase, then there are certain things that we have to do in order to keep that relationship ever growing. So there's a person that I particularly like, and there's a few different ones. Salvador Minuchin is one. He talks about structural therapy. Also, Carl Rogers, and this is part of the Western psychology that we're going to get into. Dr. Carl Rogers is a great man. Way back in the 60s, he did a case study with an individual. You can catch it on YouTube. And his whole approach is called unconditional positive regard. It's the whole fabric of therapy and counseling in general, or coaching, what have you. And the whole idea behind Dr. Carl Rogers, his theory of unconditional positive regard, is that we are, as counselors or therapists or coaches, we are accepting the whole person. We're accepting the whole person. We are using some of those ancient traditional African philosophies, and also with Native American people. When they go to greet someone, they say, "I see you." And when they're saying that "I see you," it means I see the whole person. I see who you are on the inside. I see your spirit and your experience that you have and that you're bringing to this earth. And so this is nothing new. This is very biblical, if you were to look at it from that perspective, and also from different other philosophical belief systems of Buddhists. And so what she is suggesting when she is saying flow again, she is suggesting that there was a time when the relationship was alive. This flow is a stream. And when we look at the streams, when we look at the flow of water, everything that it touches, if it's good water, it's going to bring forth life. Okay, so now this is something that she is experiencing in this relationship where things are starting to die. And she is being proactive in wanting the relationship to be alive again before it gets to that point of no return in certain situations. So what we're going to look at is 3 different applications to try to help with the flow of the relationship. Number 1, we're going to talk about the gift of appreciation. Number 1 is the gift of appreciation. Number 2, we're going to talk about the gift of thoughtfulness. The gift of thoughtfulness, very powerful one. And finally, we're going to talk about reconciling differences. The gift of reconciling differences. Okay, so let's take a look at number 1 first. Let's look at the gift of appreciation. All right, so now what does that really mean, the gift of appreciation? For one, to appreciate something is that you hold it in high regard. And this is something that I really enjoy about Dr. Carl Rogers. He calls it unconditional positive regard, meaning that you, and this the whole foundation of therapy or coaching or counseling to that nature, is a therapist accepts the whole person for who they are, and with no strings attached. And that's the same kind of idea when we talk about unconditional love, or anything that has to do with accepting the person for who they truly are, with all of their good points and all of their flaws and all of the things that make them unique to who they are. So we want to understand the gift of appreciation in a more specific area, and so that we can be able to help the relationship create a flow and to break down that dam that has been holding up the water of the relationship. So first of all, you want to express how you are feeling to your partner. There's certain ways of doing this, and a lot of people really get hung up on being more accusatory and pointing the finger, or speaking to the person with when they are very emotional. And it's nothing wrong with being being in your emotions, but when we begin to try to express our feelings, and when we're emotional, sometimes it doesn't come out exactly the way that we had intended it to come out. And then the party on the other end of it, when they're listening to the emotional language, it becomes a lot of times cluttered. And men have a difficult time really understanding emotional language. For the most part, men are very logical thinkers. Okay. And women really express their emotions. That's why a lot of times females, for the most part, are very descriptive in how they express themselves, whereas men are very straightforward. So when we're looking at trying to bridge that gap between the communication differences, we want to first understand that there is a unique language that women do speak, and there's a unique language that men do speak. And how do we try to, again, bridge that gap? First of all, we want to use, and this is a old, not necessarily old, it's more like a postmodern perspective on how to communicate one's feelings. It's very simple. And this is something that, you can use with your children if you do have kids, but it works from, all across the board, from the very young all the way up to folks that are very seasoned in their life. It's the I feel because statements. So it's simply, I feel blank because blank. And a lot of times people think it's a very simplistic and, oh, that doesn't work. But when you truly understand how this language works, then it becomes very effective in communicating your feelings and having the other person understand where you're coming from. All right. So let me give you an example. For an example, you can say something on the order of, I feel unappreciated because I don't feel like you're valuing the energy that I'm putting into the relationship. Now, this can turn into something where the person on the receiving end of that may become frustrated with what you're saying. But it's very difficult when you express the I feel because statements. It's difficult for someone to argue your feelings or argue how you are feeling. It's a very it's an illogical place to come from if someone is telling you how you should feel. So therefore, when you're using the I feel because statements, you're stating exactly how you are feeling about certain things and how you are perceiving a certain event that may be going on in the relationship. Now, your perception may be right on or it may be off, but either way, it's how you are feeling about it. And so now this can spark a conversation. Okay, so now the person that is listening to you has different options, and this kind of can screen out some of your thoughts that you may be having about how the other person truly feels about you or how you are feeling, because that person is going to then express whether they truly value your feelings or they are struggling to really understand where you're coming from. Okay, so now even if they're struggling to understand where you're coming from, it's how they're expressing that. So when someone is truly caring about the other person, then they do not want the other person to feel a certain way, hurt or undervalued or unappreciated or unloved, all those different types of emotions in the relationship. They don't want that person to feel that way. They're going to try to do their best to try to rectify the problem. Now, sometimes bitterness may have contaminated the relationship by an argument that's been unsettled way back when, and then that causes more frustration, even if you do use this particular tool, the I feel because statement. But that does give rise to how we can begin to clarify or clear the problem from the past also. Okay, so those are different types of tools. That's a different type of tool that we can use in order to show our appreciation for the other person, and also to be able to listen to where the other person is coming from. All right. So now let's look at the gift of thoughtfulness. So this right here is where we want to, as a person, we want to step outside of ourselves and to learn to see the world from our partner's perspective. And so may ask the question, well, how do I do this? This seems to be very difficult. Well, number one, you can do this by simply listening. And this ties into or the gift of appreciation. When we're using the I feel because statements, listening is the biggest thing. You don't have to try to understand the person's feelings 100%, or you don't have to see it from their perspective 100%, but just listening to the person, right? And using what Dr. Carl Rogers called unconditional positive regard, accepting of the whole person, goes a long way. A lot of times from my perspective as a male, and I'm in a relationship with a female, I don't have to understand everything that she is expressing, and where she's, where she's standing on certain issues, or I have to agree with it. But the very fact that I am willing to listen and not say anything, or not to argue back with her about her feelings, which is an illogical place to be, goes a long way. Now she is feeling valued just by me listening. And how you do this is you simply reflect back without being condescending. You reflect back how she is feeling. Okay, I hear that you're feeling unappreciated because it seems like, you're putting all this energy into the relationship, and you're feeling like I am not doing the things that that you find valuable. You're not feeling that value, and I can see how that may hurt you. So now you can then begin to express how you may feel. Well, I feel this way because of this, and then she can, on her end, begin to try to understand, and that's sitting down listening. Okay, so that's the gift of thoughtfulness. All right, thoughtfulness has another part to it. Okay, so there's 3 different parts within the gift of thoughtfulness. There's the listening, and number 2 is being present, being in the moment. Okay, so now when a person is talking to you about their feelings, your mind is not wandering off about laundry or going out to work on the car, or what's for dinner. Okay, that's not showing appreciation. That's exactly the thing that will contaminate and destroy a relationship and bring separation, is not being present, not being in a moment where you're holding other things in higher regard than the person that's in front of you. Okay, so that's one of the biggest issues that I have seen in relationships, where a lot of women have felt underappreciated or unappreciated, because for one, the male may put another thing or object in front of her, or whatever it is, or their mind is on it. Okay. There's a saying, I think it's a biblical saying, where your gift is, there will your heart be also. Okay. So putting your energies into being present is very important. Number 3, with the gift of thoughtfulness, is valuing the other person's needs. Okay, so when you are looking at the person that's in front of you, what are his or her's needs? What are their needs? Okay, and now it is not wants, and that's what we're going to go into when we talk about the gift of reconciliation. It is not the wants; it is the needs. Okay, what does that person need in order for the relationship to flow, right? To have that momentum. Now, it is not just for that person. Okay, when she's writing this question about how can a partner help get a stuck relationship to flow again, she's from what I'm hearing from her is that she wants it to work out. She wants the relationship to move. Okay, it's not just what he needs to do on his end, but how can we work together? And that's the approach that you want to take. What are his needs and what are your needs that you can be able to work together as one and in unity? Now, this goes back to the principle in the couples of Malkia Mafame. Malkia is the queen, Mafame is the king. All right. Malkia na Mimi is the king, the queen and I. Mafame na Mimi is the king and I. Okay. And so what are the king's needs? What are the queen's needs? There are certain qualities about the queen that makes her uniquely her. There's certain qualities about the king that makes him uniquely him. And there are certain needs that are involved with it, not just the wants, but the needs. Okay. And then understanding and valuing those needs, and each person is different in the relationship. And so in valuing their needs is something that's going to really help with the gift of thoughtfulness. Okay. So we covered 3 areas within this particular gift. Number 1 is listening. Number 2 is being present. Number 3 is valuing their needs. Okay. Finally, let's look at the gift of reconciliation. Okay. And working with the flow of the relationship. So we want to first to learn in reconciliation, learn to distinguish your needs versus your wants. Okay. So if we're to reconcile in a relationship and we already have the forgiveness, when we've asked for forgiveness or whatever it may be, of putting, honey, I put you behind. I really appreciate you. I apologize for not putting you first. Okay. So that's number 1. All right. That's really good. Okay. And meaning it, and then putting some action behind those words and truly meaning it in your heart. Right. And putting that good energy back into the relationship, because that energy that you're taking out of the relationship is the selfishness that goes along with it, is tapping out the energy, the good energy that's within the relationship, by not being thoughtful and not being present, and by selfish ambition or attitudes that goes along. It really saps away the whole energy within a relationship, and it dams up that flow that goes on. Okay. So now we want to understand in the gift of reconciliation, first, it is forgiveness. Number 2 is understanding your needs versus your wants. All right. So there are certain things that you need, and we talked a little bit about this. There are certain things that you want or you desire in relationship. Now, the desire doesn't make it, it's not something that is detrimental to the relationship. You can be with it or without it. It's a desire. Okay. You may desire red roses every other Friday, maybe, I don't know. Or you may desire to go out to do certain things, or go on a trip every now and then. Those are like desires or something to that nature. It may be something different. Everybody has different desires. But then there are certain needs. We have needs to feel loved. We have needs to feel heard. We have needs to feel appreciated. Those are needs. And separating the wants from the needs is really important. Okay. Your want versus your need. I need to feel loved. I want that person to, do the things that I would like for them to do 100% of the time, or even 90% of the time, or 80%. Those are the wants, but that doesn't necessarily happen in relationships. All right. But your needs should happen. And when it does not happen, your needs, then that causes some conflict, and it begins to deteriorate the relationship. And then that's when we see all these problems start to arise. Okay. All right. So we covered 3 basic gifts, and each of these gifts has different sub categories. Okay. So we talked about the gift of appreciation, expressing how you truly feel. Right. Number 1 is it's a gift of appreciation, expressing how you feel. I feel blank because of blank. And then you put in those verbs, unappreciated, undervalued. And then you put in what you're getting from that person, what is making you feel unappreciated. And we want to stay away from being accusatory or pointing the finger in that relationship or in that communication style. And this is not to spark an argument. Okay, we're coming into the relationship or into the communication, into the communication with this person with a clear mind. We've thought about how we truly feel, and we're not speaking out in anger. Okay, and that's sometimes it's just inevitable. That's just the way relationships are when we are angry or frustrated. But it does help to have a clear mind and to set some time aside to really truly talk about how we feel about certain issues that have been coming up in the relationship. And this is the crow, right? This is the enemy of the relationship. The certain things that are getting in the way of you two being happy together. All right. So now we're looking at number 2 is to be able to have or to express the gift of thoughtfulness. All right. We're learning to step outside of ourselves and to see the world from the other person's perspective. How do we do that? This is the subcategories. Number 1, we want to listen. Number 2, we want to be present. Number 3, we want to value their needs. Okay. And finally, the gift of reconciliation. Right? We want to learn to distinguish your needs from your wants, And then also we talked about forgiveness. That's number 1 is forgiveness. Number 2 is distinguishing your needs from your wants. Okay. And that's going to do it for our blogcast. This is a very good one. I think we can really go on about this. Different subject, but there's 3 different ones, and I'm going to be covering each of these questions until they're answered. And then if you guys out there in the Facebook world, YouTube or Instagram, Twitter, if you guys have questions, you can feel free to leave it on my Facebook page, or you can go to www.montrieljamari.com and you can send me an email, and I will be sure to try to get at least one of your questions answered on the radio blogcast. Okay. And I also, if you want to go on to Facebook and like that page, I would really appreciate it if you would go to Podbeam. If you want to do that, I have the Lions blog share up now, thanks to Michelle Beltran. The Lions blog share is up on my website right now. So all of these different radio ones from the past are going to be on that Lion Share blogcast. Again, I really appreciate everyone for all of your feedback. I was just talking with someone today. I didn't realize they were even listening to the radio show, but he's going to be sharing this with a lot of different people, and he really supports the local community. All right, all my people in Oregon and Southern California, really appreciate everybody. Again, this is Montriel Jamari, your inner strength relationship coach, using Western psychology and African philosophy to help you to live life more abundantly. Now, if you know someone that may benefit from this radio broadcast, go ahead and share it and send them this way. Again, we really appreciate you. This is part of that Uhusani Watu. It is the greater good, the big village. Till we meet again, my friend. Be good and be well.